would say that as Black women, most of us, not all of us, there are exceptions, we have a battle with hair because for us, some hair is good hair. That's the history. You either have good hair or you have bad hair. We've had that discussion many, many, many more times than we've ever had a discussion about body image. We've dealt with the tone of our skin more than we've ever dealt with body image, where you have your light complexioned Blacks, then you have your medium complexion Blacks, and you have your darker complexion Blacks. We've had to contend with those conversations much more than we've ever had to contend with body image.
Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. Sometimes God puts just the right person in your life at just the right time. I have several friends who fit into this category, including my friend Camisha Broussard. We have spent hours on the sidewalks of our neighborhood. The first time out, we discussed politics, capitalism, health, body image, just light stuff, just chatting, Camisha is a mother to 4 great boys, a wife to a great Ironman triathlete, a professor for the greatest community college in Houston, and she's working on being a great writer and an amateur pizza maker. Camisha is also Black and has played an integral part in my own awareness and education of the experience of Black America. Because cross-cultural body image is something I've been exploring and just thinking about for a while, I asked Camisha how she'd feel about coming on the show and having a conversation with me. Some of it we've talked about before and some of it hasn't, but I thought you might find it interesting. Not all of my community is white, but I know a lot of you are, and I thought you might find her experience as a Black woman in America as interesting as I did. Camisha was instrumental in developing one of the chapters of my upcoming book, Your Worthy Body, Find Freedom and Health by Breaking All the Rules. And she and I we went back and forth, and she was really, really helpful in developing it. This particular chapter, I dig into the body image of Black women versus white women and just explore some space that, quite frankly, I need to grow in. Now, speaking of my book, Your Worthy Body, if you haven't signed up to be notified when it's released on November 4th, 2021, please do that today. In fact, I'll be sharing a few recipes from it before that release date. So you may want to go ahead, sign up, and this is something that you can enjoy as the weather cools down. It is finally getting cooler here in Houston. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, if you're listening to this after November 4th, go buy it on Amazon. It'll be there. And before we get in, I want to highlight something that we say at the beginning of the discussion, which is this conversation is not representative of all Black women. It's Camisha's experience and her story. So please don't take it as truth that applies to all Black women and their bodies. Just like as white women, if you're white, you have a different story than maybe your best friend. And this is obviously the case with everybody in their own personal experiences. So just keep that in mind as we dig into this. Okay, let's bring on Camisha. Camisha, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Me too. Thank you, Amy.
This is the second time I've seen you today, but the first time was in person.
I know. And it's a different level of excitement. It's like when I see you when I'm running out of the house at 6:25, I'm like, gotta go see Amy. Oh, gotta go see Amy. Oh, I gotta go see Amy. And then today it was like, ooh, I gotta get cute for Amy.
I think you've seen me with makeup on before. I think we've met for coffee and you've seen me with makeup, but we got to know each other on the sidewalks in the heat of the summer.
Yes. No makeup, no nothing.
No makeup, no nothing, but a whole lot of sweat and exercise clothes.
Yes. Yes.
Why don't you, if you don't mind, sharing, because I know the story and I know how I would say it, but I would love to hear how you might explain how we know each other.
Okay. First, I do honestly believe that God intended for us to connect. I really believe that because we have so many connection points that were completely accidental or we didn't even know about. Um,
Yeah.
I remember the very, very first time I met you. And before I met you, you put out this. It was shortly after that dreadful Memorial Day weekend. In 2020, I think it was 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and you put out a call saying, hey, I want to connect with people, and you invited people to your home, people from our community to your home to work out. I remember looking, and I was like, who does that? Okay, I'll go. Um,
And
and
to clarify too, just to make sure if people are off in their own world, that was after George Floyd
yeah,
was murdered at the hands of police, and this was a racial reconciliation
yes,
group that you and I were both on. Okay, so anyway,
absolutely.
go on.
Absolutely. Well, I was not a worker outer, although I'm married to one. And I just felt like, you opened up space, you opened up an opportunity, and you were opening your home. And I was like, oh, I'll go. And the first time I went, I remember feeling so out of shape and watching you and listening to you. And we were working out, and there were these beautiful women, and there was a connection there. And I was like, I so don't belong. So I had never
Oh,
intended, I never told you this. I had
no, you
never ever
didn't.
intended to come back. I was just like, yeah, I just don't belong there. It's just not for me. I don't know how to work out. I don't know what I'm doing. I look stupid. So then we were on our neighborhood site, right?
Mhm.
And this lady posted something about this erase racism marathon. And she was like, if anybody wants to partner with me. And I was like, yeah, I'll partner with you. It's cool. A few days later, I went back to it. I was like, that's the same lady.
You didn't.
I didn't know. I did not know. So
You
I
really
was like,
meant it when you said that God brought us together. You didn't know.
yes, yes, I never told you that. So when I realized you were the same woman, I was like, okay, well, all right, we're in it now, so let's go. So we signed up for the Erase Racism Marathon and walked, and we start walking. And through this conversation we're having, we realized, we've been in the same area for all of this time. And when you told me you had a son who was in, I think at the time, elementary school or middle school, one of the two, and
Yeah. So, yeah, the time you're talking about, he was 5. He was
right. So
little.
that was like years ago. And my
Yeah.
son at the time had to have been maybe like 12 or 13, but he was huge. And we were talking about how your son would wait at the bus stop, and there was this group of older boys who would play football with him. And the way you described this black boy, it was like, I said, that was Arian. That had to be Arian. And when I sent you the picture of Arian, and you were like, that's him. I said, that's it. We were meant, you and I were
Yeah.
meant to connect. And then we were both writers. And I was like, yeah, this was me and Amy's destiny. So
Yeah.
that's how we met. Erase Racism brought us together, but we had crossed paths a couple of times before that.
I know, wasn't that crazy once we figured out? I mean, because Arian he played football at the local middle school, and yeah, my son was 5, and they would all, after they would get off the bus, these big middle school boys,
Mhm.
and play football. And Arian, the reason I remember Arian is because he was so kind and welcoming
Yeah.
to my son, who was this little, I mean, he was big, he's always been big for his age, but he was 5 years old. And he was
Yeah.
like, all right, come on. And he just engaged him. And it was so meaningful to me. So, yeah, I know it was really cool.
It's destiny. It's destiny.
It was, it
Mhm.
was, one of the things that we, especially initially spent a lot of time talking about, and I think it's because you were very gracious and open to my questions. But we talked a lot about body image and body image within, in general, within the Black women and white women. And I think we both kind of surprised each other with the generalizations
Yeah.
of our own unique cultures. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit today with kind of body image and health, because I learned so much, and I would go back and I would share what you taught me, just about your own experiences. And I just thought, I think that this is a conversation that people would like to hear, and learn, because I know a lot of my community is in the process, a lot of my community is white, not all of it. And, they're learning. And, so I'm really grateful that you agreed to come on here and talk with me. And one thing I know that is important to you, and I think we both want to honor and respect, is our conversation is your story and your experience. And, you do not represent all Black women.
No.
You do not represent
No.
all Black women's experiences.
No.
And, and so I want to remind my community that the stories and experiences that Camisha shares is Camisha's, and not everyone else. So I want to give you an opportunity to add that to that or correct that.
Absolutely. Definitely. The community tells us we are not a monolith. So I looked that word up and learned what it meant. And yes, we are not a monolith. No race, no culture, no gender is. So these are my experiences.
Yes, totally. It's funny you used that word, and in our chapter in Your Worthy Body, in the book that I've written that you have helped me so much with, I used that as word as well, because I just thought that was a really appropriate word to use in this discussion and in this conversation. So let's start at a high level. Okay. And having said all of that, this is a general question. So this might be answered differently by someone else, but I would like to hear your thoughts behind how would you describe and I'm using some quotes, but ideal body for Black women?
Ooh, okay. That's a curvy comes to mind automatically. Curvy. Okay. Curvy and bumpy.
Okay, you got to dig into that. What do you mean by bumpy?
Like when I say curvy, we could be small, but we have to have the curve in the middle. And then when we get further down towards the hips, we want the curve to come out a little bit. Then I say bumpy because if you look at us from the front, we want to, hey, we want it here,
Bump on the top.
Yeah. And then if you look in the back, we kind of want it back there. So initially, I would just say, regardless, for me and for my friends and people I know, we whether we're small or whether we're a little bigger, we want those curves obvious,
Okay.
And we want that figure. That's the best way I could describe it. For me, and for people that I know, health kind of comes in there somewhere, maybe, but we want that body to be strong. We want it to be curvaceous. We want it to be like, I'll never forget, what was that song? Oh my God, it was horrible. Bumps and Something by MC Hammer. And that was like us. And that's how we want our bodies to be voluptuous.
Okay. What do you think drives that?
I would say men. Initially. I think about my husband and, if I'll never forget when I had our baby, and he's 3 years old now. I had some complications, and I went from my pre-pregnancy weight was 167, and I'm 5'6". I went from 167 to 142. We were both struggling.
You mean like after you had the baby?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I think while I was pregnant, I was about 235. And at that time, he was worried that, he was like, okay, are you going to get back to your 160, 165? I was like, yeah, I haven't had a problem. I have 3 children before. I should be fine. But when I had the complications, I go down to 142. I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, where's my body? And I'll just be honest, where are my breasts? Where's my butt?
Yeah.
Where are my hips? Nothing's fitting like it's supposed to fit. And he kind of tried to be he tried to be nice about it. He tried to be considerate and gentle about it. But he would, say, "Ooh, come on, let's go eat." And I'm like,
And if you can't see her, she's patting her boobs right now.
Right. He'd come behind me and he'd like, "Hey, let's pat my butt a little bit." He'd be like, "Okay, you're picking up a little bit of weight." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good." So initially I would say men. And I would even go back to my grandmother. My grandmother, for me, she loved feeding me. And she loved when my body started to take shape. She used to say that I had bow hips. And the bow hips for her and for generations before her represented a woman who would be a good childbearer. And she felt like if my hips were strong and the curvier they were, for her, that represented strength. The curvier they were, and they meant the stronger I was. So the stronger I was, in my grandmother's mind, the fewer complications I would have when it comes to bearing children. So that was important to her. So it became important to me. The women in my family are usually very busty women. And we prided ourselves on that. So if there was a woman in the family who wasn't very busty, she got it. She heard it. It's like, are you sure your family? What size have you gotten to? So there's always been encouragement in my family and from my husband. There's always been encouragement to be bigger, not unhealthy, not overweight, but bigger. And something, what my husband says, something I can hold on to.
So I want to dig into that a little bit more because, it's interesting. My experience as a white woman, which is not necessarily everyone's experience, but my experience is bigger is associated with unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And the goal is not curvy and not bumpy. Now, I do think that that's changing. Like, so I'm 46. I grew up in I was born in the mid 70s. I grew up in the 80s, kind of came of age in the 90s. And so it was really, it was as thin as possible. I mean, Ally McBeal came out when I was like 25 years, I don't know, somewhere around 25. Like it was just like thin, wafy, everything. Now, I do think I think it is changing a little bit because what I'm observing from the younger generation is they are more concerned about, they want a little bit bigger butt. They want a little bit stronger legs. I think, a strong looking body is important, but part of the mindset that I think, a lot of us still have is, well, if I'm too curvy, then I'm not healthy. And so it's interesting to me that there doesn't seem to, which by the way, I feel like I need to say is not true. And I've got a whole chapter in my book designed or focused on that. But, I think there's that mindset for us. And what I find interesting is there doesn't seem to be as much conversation surrounding that within the discussion of Black body image and health. Would you agree with that, or am I off?
I would definitely agree. The conversations that I have partaken in, or I've overheard, or been privy to in some type of way about health are about health, and the ones that are about body image, body shape, body type are about body image, body shape, and body type. Very seldom, if ever, have I been privy to a conversation where those two things are in the same space at the same time. Very, 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 very seldom. I cannot necessarily explain why that is. When I think back to just kind of how our history, the country's history, kind of plays a role in where Black people are when it comes to becoming more educated now about health.
Mm-hmm.
I think about my mother, my mother is, she's overweight. She is learning about her health because now she's having some health issues. But putting the two together, her body and the health issues, the acknowledgement that her body may be a result of how she has eaten for her entire life, which was taught to her by her mother, that realization started to happen kind of when it was too late, right? Mm. So when she had cholesterol, when she had high blood pressure, when she was borderline diabetic, and she's always had a thyroid problem, now the connection is being made. Okay, this lifestyle that I've lived with food that I thought was kind of okay, I didn't really connect food to health. Now I'm realizing that I have to change my entire way of eating, you know? And then when I think about my grandma, there was none of that. It was more like the body and what happens to the body over time as we age is a result of age, not a result of what we eat, what we do. It's just we get older and our bodies change. So I don't really know why. I would say for my generation, we're starting to have those kind of conversations about, hey, watch what you're putting in your body. But I would still think that there's kind of a disconnect between health and our actual body look, our body image. Because even I don't do that. If I'm eating something and I'm thinking about my cholesterol or my high blood pressure, I'm not thinking about how it's going to affect my weight until I start to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, I need some fried chicken from somewhere. I don't care what it does to me. I need some fried chicken and cornbread. Wait.
Things that have not come out of my mouth when I have lost weight. But to your point about earlier, that's because you don't, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but you don't want to lose the curviness and the bumpiness.
That's a fear of mine. That is so, honestly a fear.
It's a fear.
Yes.
Yeah. And that I think is fair. And I think that is, there's so much interconnection with things. And I'm going back to earlier when you talked about how your grandmother loved feeding you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes in for all of us, regardless of our culture. There's so much that goes into our family feeding us and the emotions associated with that and the love that we may feel or experiences that we have. And, I feel like if that's something that's how you know to either receive or give love is through food. And let's be honest, most people don't receive and feel love through kale. I mean, it's it's the fried chicken and the cornbread probably. But
yeah, kale is not very loving at all.
I actually make some good kale, but I won't give it to you to show you how much I love you.
I'll eat it.
But that's so interconnected. And so if you have someone who is trying to show you their love or you're trying to receive that from someone and they're feeding you this, what's called highly palatable. I don't know if you've heard that word, but that's foods that are really great on our palate, right? It's like the salty ones or the sugary ones or the ones with a lot of fat in it that absorb and ignite our taste buds. Then it's really hard to not take that because it's so much beyond food.
Yeah. Give me some gravy and a piece of bread and I'm happy.
Okay. But while we're on the subject of your family, I thought, you shared a story with me one time that I thought was really interesting in kind of a turning point for you. And you were eating with all of your family, and you had a big spread. And I don't remember what you said. There was probably gravy and bread.
Yeah.
And do you remember this story that you told me? Because this stuck in my mind.
Keep telling me. It'll
And
come.
you said we were all sitting around as a family, and we were all eating this wonderful food. And I looked around at the food that we were eating, and I thought, we're all going to die.
We're all going to die. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit more about that, if you don't mind, because I think that's it's, to me, it says a lot about you, about being able to recognize that relationship.
Yeah. They say that when you know better, you do better. And just to give you I think we've talked about this, I'm not sure, but I'm the first college graduate of my entire family, all generations. There's me and there's my sister. And now recently there is my cousin. So out of every generation in my family, there are only 3 women who have degrees.
Wow.
Becoming formally educated, of course, exposed me to different people who had different lifestyles, and going to events exposed me to different cuisines. Despite the fact that I also loved food, I've always loved food since I was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. But if you had asked me when I was 18 what basil was, I couldn't tell you. I had no idea what basil was until I went to a colleague's house and there was fresh basil in the salad. And I'm like, well, what's that?
Oh, well.
After, life experiences that allow you to meet other people and allow you to broaden your horizons and come out of your comfort zone and out of what you know, when it exposes you to other things, and then you start to become interested in those things, and then you start to learn about those things, but then you go back to where you came from, you have to figure out how to balance what you've always known and what you've always loved with the fact that what you've always known and what you always loved might actually be the death of you. And how do you continue to be a family when you're to have to now tell your family, I'm going to pass on the pig feet and sauerkraut this time. Let me tell you why. Uh-huh. So I like this word, even though I don't even know if it's a word, but I like it. There is an uncomfortability with learning.
Yeah.
And when I was sitting at the table, and I could tell you we had macaroni and cheese, and I'm like, okay, cheese, milk, and white carbs, not good. Mashed potatoes with gravy, dressing. We had chitlins, collard greens. And when my grandma fixed collard greens, there had to have been about a month's worth of bacon grease in the collard greens, along with some lard. And I mean, they were the best things ever. But when I realized what went into them, I was like, oh my God, I can't keep eating this like this. Mm-hmm. So that was a turning point for me. But to put that into practice is hard. It's very hard for me because that's the food that makes me feel good. I know it's not good for me, but it makes me feel good.
Yeah. So
with having to teach my mom about food and, trying to introduce her to new things. 5 years ago, neither one of us knew anything about a lentil. So I'm like, okay, we need to start looking at lentils. We need to start, looking at leeks, and we need to start eating more salads. Being able to bring her into that has helped us both a great deal, because now when I go over to her house, I don't have to say, oh, Mom, I'll pass on the smothered chicken for right now, which would hurt her feelings normally. Now she understands it. But when I get down and hungry and I need to eat, I'm like, I'm on my way. Fix me some collard greens, potato salad, hot water cornbread, and fried chicken. I'm on my way. And I'll do it once a month now because I know what it does to my body.
Yeah.
Like I say, that balance of trying to make sure it's like that food is what gave me this body in my mind. In my mind, that food is what brought me here. And when I look at a kale salad with nothing but kale and onions, I'm like, that's not going to maintain this. I need some chicken.
Yeah.
But I know chicken's not good. So that balance is hard.
Yeah, I get that. I just had this realization. I feel like how you just described health and kind of an awakening for you regarding health, and when you know more, you do better, and how it is uncomfortable, and kind of creating the stuff, but it's hard applying.
Yeah.
I would say that has been very similar to my awakening to the overall racism in America, and waking up to the disparity in the Black community, and how, I mean, like all of that stuff. Sorry, all of the words are leaving my head right now because I wasn't prepared for that. But to me, when you're describing that, I'm like, this is how I felt and still feel sometimes when I'm trying to learn, because it is hard and it's new for me, particularly because I grew up in a pretty homogenous area. Not that any racist thinking was perpetuated by those around me, but it was just when you're surrounded by pretty much an all white high school, you just don't have to think about it very much. Right. So anyway, that's, I'm going to have to be thinking on that. I'm sure we'll discuss that more at some of our 6:30 sessions, but, but that's, I mean, I definitely relate in a different way, but yeah, it is uncomfortable. But you gotta kind of stick with it. If you want to see the benefits of your health, you stick with eating, or without eating the, what'd you say, the pigs free, like you choose the better, and then just sticking with the learning process as well, and implementation.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked some about curvy and bumpy, which just still kind of makes me laugh a little bit. Not laugh, not that I'm making fun of it. It's just the way that you described it. That's great.
It's funny.
One of the things that you have also taught me a little bit is that it's not just about the body. There's a lot of other things that that Black women, or that some Black women have to contend with. So talk to us a little bit about some of those.
Oh gosh. The first thing that comes to mind is hair. Okay. We contend with hair more than we've, in my experience, more than we've contended with body image. We've had the hair image for generations now. I don't know if you heard the song, I Am Not My Hair. Have you heard that song?
I don't think so.
I forget her name. She has a very unique name, and I'm going to have to give it to you later. But she says, she goes through the whole gamut of what a lot of Black women go through. India Ari. Her name is India Ari.
Okay.
And this song is pretty old. And she talks about how when she was younger, she had one texture of hair, and then she got a jerry curl, and then she was made fun of for the jerry curl, and then she had braids. And eventually she got to the point where she's like, look, I am not my hair. I'm more than what's on my head. I would say that as Black women, most of us, not all of us, there are exceptions. There are outliers. This is not everybody's experience. We've said that. We have a battle with hair because for us, some hair is good hair. That's the history. You either have good hair or you have bad hair. We've had that discussion many, many, many more times than we've ever had a discussion about body image. There used to be a term, and people will cringe when they hear me say this, and I cringe when I say it myself. There's this term, nappy hair. You don't want your child to have nappy hair. We've battled that.
What is that? Tell me what that is.
Nappy hair is when the hair is so coarse that you can't comb through it easily. Okay. It's going to hurt a person to comb through it. It's not wavy. It can't necessarily be styled easily. it's not extremely manageable, but it is when we think back to our African roots, that is the natural texture of hair we have. That's the texture God gave us. But it's also the texture that our Black people for years did not want to have, because the coarser your hair, the nappier your hair, right? The more Black you were. And there was a time in our history where that's not what you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
We've dealt with that more than we've dealt with body image. We've dealt with the tone of our skin more than we've ever dealt with body image, where you have your light complexioned Blacks, then you have your medium complexion Blacks, and you have your darker complexion Blacks. We've had to contend with those conversations much more than we've ever had to contend with body image. And then the combination of those two things. Sometimes within the Black community, we deal more with how we talk than we ever deal with body image. You know, you talk too proper. You talk like you white. What does that mean? I talk like I'm white. I don't understand what that means.
I remember Oprah saying that she got that feedback. I mean, this was years and years ago.
Yeah.
But why do you talk like you're white? She's like, I just am talking.
This is how I talk. You know, so those are the types of things we've had to contend with. And the thing about it is I never stopped to, first of all, I didn't know a lot of white people until I moved to Texas. Chicago is very segregated, and that's where I'm from. So it's like what you were just saying, you know, when you're in a homogenous area, you don't think about what's outside of your area. This is just your world. So for me in Chicago, all of my neighbors were Black. I didn't have any Hispanic neighbors. I didn't have any white neighbors. I didn't have Vietnamese, none of that. We were all the same way. When I moved to Texas, I'll never forget the first time during the day I stepped out on my cul-de-sac and I looked over my neighbor and they were Vietnamese. And I was like, what? I was shocked.
So it's just different than what you're used to.
I didn't know if I should speak to them, if I shouldn't speak to, I did not know how to function. And then the other neighbors were Hispanic. I was like, what? There were 2 Black families on the block and everybody else was a completely different race or culture. That was new for me, right? Mm-hmm. That was very new. So then I had to learn to become cognizant of their world, their culture, the things that they did, the things that they didn't do. And I never stopped to think, what are the conversations that they have amongst their own people? You know, do they deal with colorism? Do they deal with hair texture? Do they deal with complexion? You know, I never thought to ask. I never had a white person I could ask. And then I never thought to ask when I met white people, hey, do y'all have light-skinned white people versus dark-skinned white people? How does that work? You know, what are the conversations amongst you all about that? I wouldn't even know how to start a conversation like that. But those are some of the things that being a Black woman, I have dealt with and some of my friends have dealt with. Sometimes we are automatically put into a certain category, especially me, because I'm a light-skinned Black woman that has good hair. Mm-hmm. So I'm automatically put in that category where, she thinks she's better than everybody else. Right?
Wow. Just because of the genetics that you were given.
Yes.
Wow.
And then you get the question, what do you mix with? I don't know.
Yeah.
I heard Italian, but I don't know. You know, I know my mother's Black and I know my father's extremely light skinned with good hair. Supposedly his mother is Italian, but I don't know.
Do white people ask you that or do Black people?
Yes, both.
Oh, really?
Yes, both. I'll never forget when I was in Africa, an African said, well, what are you? Because you're not Black. I was like, yeah, I am. He was like, no, you're not Black. And he literally touched my hair. He said, look at your hair.
He didn't get that memo.
And he didn't get that.
To not touch a Black woman's hair.
No, he didn't get that memo. He was like, you're not Black. He said, look at your hair. You're not Black. And he touched my face. I was like, whoa. Like, I know.
Because in his mind, you didn't have African skin because dark skin was all he knew in Africa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he was like, what are you?
Do you think, with regard to colorism in particular, do you think that that's changing at all, either both within the Black community or also if there is have you witnessed any different types of perception from other cultures, white or anything else, of like light skinned or dark skinned or anything like that? I mean, do you think that it is what it is, or do you think has there been a shift at all?
I think that we've become much more educated about how ignorant we were at that time, to say that light-skinned blacks were better than darker blacks. I think now in today's time, we are much more, generally, most of us are much more educated, regardless to our level of formal education. We now are like that. That's just, you don't do that. We're all Black. The different things make us up. So I do see that. At the same time, I believe that there are still preferences. Unfortunately, sometimes on social media, I'll see a guy or a girl say, I don't like dark-skinned women.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that is like a stab, because I have seen some beautiful dark-skinned women. They are beautiful. People of all shades, all colors are beautiful. But I've literally seen people write, I don't like dark-skinned women. I'm like, where does that come from?
And so are these other African Americans saying this about, like, African American women?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then sometimes you have situations where people will talk about lightening their skin. Way back generations ago, you would have people who would attempt to lighten their skin. It was rumored that Michael Jackson lightened his skin, and we don't think that that's the case. But there were two magazines that were very popular amongst Black culture. It was Jet Magazine and Ebony. And if you go through a certain time span of Jet Magazine and the women who appeared as the beauties of the week, very rarely, if ever, would you see a dark-skinned woman. She was usually always light complexioned. Yes. So it's still there. And yes, it's amongst ourselves. And one thing I will say Black people don't like to do is we do not like for our skeletons to be talked about in public. We want to keep our skeletons in our closet, and as small as that closet might be, if it's full of skeletons, let's just keep it all packed up in there, and let's just talk about it. Do not open that door. Don't let not one skeleton out. But that is one of the things that we do to ourselves, and that is still perpetuated to this day. It's just not as blatant and not as obvious as it used to be generations ago.
And so by skeletons, just to clarify, you mean, I'm trying to get the right words surrounding this. You mean judging others basically on the color of their skin, on their hair, things, just genetic stuff.
Yeah, doing the exact same things to each other that we don't want other races doing to us. We do.
That's strong.
It's
Whoa, that's really strong.
You know me.
I know you do. I know. I appreciate your truth. Okay. What are your thoughts regarding this statement? Mm-hmm. Black women seem to have more body confidence than white women.
I think so. I think we do.
Why?
From what I have experienced, and I remember telling you about this one time, I see many more white women running than I do Black women, right? Not to say that Black women don't run. Black women do run. But that's becoming, there's a reason we have this perception that Black women don't run. Because years ago, that may not have been the case. But now as we become healthier, become more knowledgeable, more educated on that, more Black women are starting to run. White women seem to be very, very aware and cognizant of their physiques. It's like what they eat, what they wear, how often they work out, waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to go work out, not caring if they get in the pool and not caring about their hair. And it's just about all staying healthy. We don't, not a whole lot of us do that. We just don't. I used to swim in high school. Now, if I'm going near a pool, I'm saying to myself, I gotta wash my hair after that, and then I gotta blow dry it after that, and then I gotta comb it. I don't have time for all that. I'm not going in the pool. Even though I know that's one of the healthiest things I could do for my body is do some laps. My hair can't take all of that.
Yeah.
But from what I have experienced, most white women are just going to dive on in. Okay, well, y'all go ahead and do that. I'm not doing that. Black women think about other things. We got other stuff going on. And most of us are comfortable with our bodies. Even if we're overweight, most of us are comfortable, unfortunately, with our bodies, even if it's overweight. We're thinking about working. We're thinking about it. And we all know the statistics. We all know the dynamics. We're thinking about some of us, a lot of us are single moms. We're thinking about our kids. We're thinking about trying to take care of the children. Some of us, unfortunately, don't have great relationships with our fathers. We're battling those issues. Some of us, as a result, don't have great relationships with our mother. We're battling those things. We're battling work. We're very, very career driven. Very career driven. We want the degrees. We want the education. We want the advancement. We want the professional status. Those are the things that are important to us. The body image, it's there probably, but it's not our focus. It's not our priority. Our priority is getting to a better place. And that path looks different depending on where you are and who you are.
Well, and what I hear you saying is there's so much energy that we can give to things. And when you've got more on your plate and where you're trying to figure things out, you're not going to be worried about, does my butt look big in these, or in these pants or whatever, or what.
And keep in mind, our butt looks big and we like that. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is different than what I have. Different than my journey. I'll just say that. And I do want to, you were talking about if it's overweight, and I do think that there is something to be said for being overweight does not necessarily mean not being healthy. The person who is in that body knows, what they're doing, and if that body is healthy or not. And in fact, I read an interesting study that Black women, oh gosh, I'm going to misquote this, but basically healthy Black women have a higher BMI, which I hate the BMI, but for the purpose of this, than white women. And it's, and in general, it can be a little bit higher and still have all of the same positive health metrics that a white woman may have with a lower BMI. And I thought that was, I would love to learn a little bit more of what all goes into that, but I thought that was really interesting.
I'll never forget my doctor at the time, my OB, she wanted me to lose weight. And she was Indian. And she wanted me to get, and she the BMI. And I was familiar with it. And I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, Black women don't listen to that crap. Whatever. Whatever. Let me just get to this appointment. But she wanted me to get down to 150. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. I was healthy. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have high cholesterol. I didn't have diabetes. I didn't have numbers that were even climbing close to that. Everything was fine. Why exactly do you want me to be 150 pounds? Because that chart says I'm supposed to be 150 pounds because I'm 5'6". I'm not. No, I do believe I left and got a hot dog after that, probably knowing. But I think that when we, unfortunately, when I say overweight, what's in my mind is nobody cares. What's in my mind is whoever that person is who doesn't fit that magic number weight that everybody in society says we're supposed to be. If they're comfortable with that, then that's them. No one cares. But when we talk about body image, unfortunately, we have this set of standardized vocabulary words that we use. And for some reason, overweight is what we want to say overweight because we don't want to say a different word, right? But in the grand scheme of things, who cares, really? If you're comfortable with who you are, what you are, and how you are.
And and to me, and you may disagree with me on this, and that's okay, but I would say all of the above and all of the other, metrics are good. So your like you said, cholesterol, no problems there. High blood pressure, no problems there. Diabetes or, glucose levels. And are you sleeping well? And like, there's a whole lot of other things that go into, are you healthy? And weight is but one of them. Yeah. And so, I would, like I said, I would say all of the above to what you said. And then adding all of that. I think this sounds like it's significantly more prevalent in white culture, but it's like, well, if you're overweight or if you're over a certain amount, then you're not healthy. And that's, in my opinion, and from what I have been, the research that I have read, there's a whole lot of research called health at every size. And how just because you look at someone, and they might be overweight, but what's going on the inside. Right. So I definitely appreciate that. Okay, I want to ask one more question, if you don't mind sharing. You have spent some time talking to me and educating me about Big Mama. And this was really interesting and fascinating to me. Can you educate my listeners a little bit about Big Mama, who she is, what she represents, and all of that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, I would say in one word, Big Mama represents home. For many of us who grew up in that generation where there was a matriarch in the family that was really, really important. She was the core of everything. She was the center of everything. When you thought about what your next move was, she's the person who came to mind. There was a movie, Martin Lawrence was in it, and it was called Big Mama, generations and generations ago. And in that movie, I think he was a police officer or a detective or something working on a case, but he had to put on this suit to make him look like a woman. And it was a big suit. He transformed into a woman who was really big. And the name of it was Big Mama. When I think about Big Mom, I think about a woman in the kitchen. And for some reason, if she's small in stature or if she's skinny, she doesn't really fit the bill. Big Mama is strong. Big Mama has some pounds on her. And Big Mama is going to take care of you no matter what. She's going to put you in line when you're getting out of sorts. She's going to take care of you when you're sick. She's going to hold you. And when she holds you, there is this warmth that generates from her. And it lets you know that no matter what, everything is going to be okay. And if everything's not going to be okay, she's going to find a way to make it okay. So the bad thing about it, and the sadder thing about it, is that not every family has one. And unfortunately, more and more of our generations are losing it. We're losing that sense of who Big Mama was. For me, Big Mama was my grandma. And she wasn't a small woman. She wasn't an extremely large woman, but she wasn't a small woman. But when I think about the person who takes care of you, the person who brings you in and folds over you, the person who you can go to when you're hurt, the person who fixes everything, and then the person who feeds you and feeds you well out of love, not out of knowing, but out of love. That person is Big Mama for us, for me, and for women like me.
And when you say you feel like your generation
Yeah.
is losing that a little bit, or maybe the future generations, do you mean more of the matriarchal
Mhm.
role, or
Yes. Yeah.
not that, but not necessarily the physicality of it, but it's more of just that role of the center of the
Yes.
family?
And they kind of go hand in hand because it's the physicality and the role. They can't really be
Yeah.
separated from each other. Now I see women who, and it's odd that we talk about it this way. As Black people become more educated about how food impacts their bodies, and how it affects us, we see a shift from the food we used to eat because we had to. It was the only option we had. And then it
Mhm.
slowly, from it being the only option, it slowly became our preferred cuisine. And we did dynamic things with it. Now to realizing we have to change that. Well, with those changes, those foods created our bodies then, right? So now these new foods that we're eating because they're healthy and we want to live longer and we want to be able to enjoy our lives, the quality of life. Those foods don't give us the same body image. They don't give us that same robust body that we're used to seeing. But in addition to that, what's happening now is we have a much higher percentage of Black families that are single parent families, right? The matriarch from my generation, she was very, very, very connected to the patriarch,
Mhm.
right? What they went through, be it good or bad, was what they went through behind their closed door. They were always a united front. They had roles, and you knew what you could do with the patriarch, and you knew what you could do with the matriarch. And you knew the matriarch ran the house for the most part, but you knew that the patriarch thought he did. you know, we're not really seeing that anymore. Unfortunately, what's happening now with our culture, and my husband and I talk about it all the time, unfortunately, it seems as though our men and our women are battling each other. And
Mhm.
part of that is, somebody asked me, well, aren't you an independent woman? Yeah, I am. But I'm not independent from my husband. I need
Yeah.
my husband. It doesn't work without my husband. But we've entered this, our culture have entered this era where we don't need our men. And with that mentality and that perspective, the matriarch persona goes away because she takes care of everyone and she's not against anyone. But now in our culture, that's perceived as a weakness and a weakness that Black women can't afford. So we're losing that, unfortunately. And now we're becoming
Wow.
professionals and, we can do it all ourselves and we don't need a man. Not me. I need my man.
Hey, I mean, I need mine
Yes.
too. Yeah. He makes me better. He makes me better.
It makes me feel good to take care of my boys. So in,
Yeah.
in my way, I feel like I'm the matriarch of my family. But when I think about my sons,
Mhm.
who's going to be the matriarch of their families because the women are so different now. It's a different
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Well, this is why you're taking care of yourself. So you'll be around long enough to be
Yes,
there.
yes, yes,
There. Now, let me ask
yes.
you something. I know that there are certain things that are okay for white people to say and certain things that are not okay. So like big mama, like is that okay for me to say? Like if like what I wanted to say right there is and you can be your
Yeah,
boy's big mama. But I don't like that's okay.
you know,
Okay. Cuz I don't want to cross any boundaries that are not right for me to cross.
Black folks are funny. Yeah. Well, there's this saying that if you get invited to the picnic, then if you get invited to the family barbecue, because Black folks don't have picnics, if you get invited to the family barbecue, then you have some leeway, right? It means that we trust you. So if we trust you, if
Okay.
you've earned that trust, then you get some leeway sometimes, you know? Unfortunately, sometimes I feel sorry for white folks sometimes because I know they be trying and they'll say something and one day it's fine and then the next day it's like but it was just fine the other day. We're fickle that way. It's not right. It really isn't. I feel like if we don't want white people saying it, then we shouldn't. But if we're okay saying it, then we've accepted it. Then you can't raise an eyebrow if somebody gets so comfortable with you. They're like, yeah, Big Mama. Wait a minute, that's not her word. Well, how are they supposed to know that? You know? So I would say it's a trust issue. Now, if you said something to me,
Okay.
I'm like, oh, we're good, we're cool, we're good. But now if you go like around my mom and you say, she'd be like, what she know about Big Mama? They got a Big Mama? She'll be like,
Okay.
Grandmama Black? Like, no, Mama. We've had this conversation, and so that answers the question.
Okay. So for my white listeners, maybe this is a term to use respectfully in a trusted space.
Definitely a trusted space. Definitely a trusted space. You know,
okay. All right. Just want to make sure because there's just
gauge the room, and if you feel a twinge of I don't know, don't do it.
Then don't say it. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. See, I said I had one more question, but now if you don't mind, really quickly, share with me your struggle between starting to work out because you've been starting to move your body a little bit more and not wanting to change certain parts of your body.
Okay. So working out now makes me feel less guilty about whatever I eat. I will say that, okay, before when I wasn't working out at all, right? And I would eat things I know I had no business eating. I felt so bad. I felt so guilty. Ignorance is bliss. It is truly bliss. When we're no longer ignorant, we have guilt and we have a conscience and we're like, oh crap, I shouldn't really eat this. So I'll be sitting in the parking lot at Popeyes, feeling bad, enjoying it, but feeling bad. For me, it's been cutting down on the things that are bad, increasing the things that are good. So I feel better because I'm eating salads, a lot of salads. I listened to you and I heard about the probiotics and the gut health, and you were telling me that so I started researching probiotics and I'm like, okay, what can I eat every day? So I've become regimented in that respect. I'm getting better at what I put into my body, and I'm getting more disciplined at putting less of the bad stuff in my body. I'm not going to say I'm not putting bad stuff in my body.
Well, I don't want you to not put any bad stuff in your body.
Good. Thank you very much.
No, that's not realistic. That's not realistic. And the other thing too, that I think that this goes for everybody, regardless of what your preferred food is, but we all have those foods that we want to enjoy with people, and you don't want to take away that experience. And like one of the things that I'll easily talk about is wine. I mean, I like sitting around drinking wine with my husband. Like that's a wonderful experience that I have. And so, yeah, I'm not going to take that out because that's something that we enjoy doing. That's something we enjoy doing. Okay. All right. Now I have two final questions. One is, do you have a meaningful Bible verse that you would like to share?
Yes. And you and I talked about a little bit, I'm not religious, but I'm very, very God-fearing. I'm very God-fearing. And mine is Hebrews 12:11. And it goes along with what we talk about. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. In addition to my struggle with food and becoming active, I struggle with my mouth. I have a tendency to want to put folks in their place. I've been trying to discipline myself and trying to figure out where that comes from and why that is, and learning when to yield, regardless to what the outcome is, learning when to zip it and yield. It's worked wonders in my marriage.
That's really funny that you talk about that. I am in the middle of a YouVersion devotional with a couple friends about words in your marriage, and having the discipline of which words are life giving, which words are that can tear you down. And so I totally know what you say. And I kind of laughed when you said I have a tendency. I think you said something like I have a tendency to tell people what I think or something like that. I mean, I think we all have areas of discipline, right? And with our words, and maybe it's to our spouse, maybe it's to other people, maybe it's to, someone in the line at the grocery store. I mean, there's just, maybe it's someone on social media or, a group or something like that. So I think that that's really, I love that you say that. And I think that's really applicable to so many of our different situations.
I realized one day I was talking to Stan about something, and I just wanted to tell you this because it was such a moment for me. Stan and I have this thing. If I love him more than I love myself, and if he loves me more than he loves himself, then we're both getting what we need. There was a time we were in a disagreement. We were in an argument. We're grown. We were in an argument. And for me, it was a God voice. And the God voice said, you have to love your husband more than you love the need to be right.
Oh.
When that happened for me, right in the middle of the argument, I just stopped. And I just told myself, you know what? I have to love you more than I love my desire and my need to be right. I said, so I'm going to stop it right now. I'm done.
That's really, really good stuff about your husband. And I hope that sticks with people. I might have to pull that out and use that somewhere and give you credit to it. Cause that's really good. Really good. Okay. Final question I ask all my guests. I am fascinated by tattoos. I do not have any, but I think that they're very interesting, and find oftentimes that people who decide to put something on their body for the rest of their lives have a good story behind it. So I was wondering, I'm just going to ask the first part because I know the answer to the first part, or at least the first of the first part. Anyway, I know you have some tattoos. Would you share about one of them and if it has a meaning behind it?
Yes. I have an anklet tattoo, and it is a vine. I think it's really important to talk about kind of the age. I got my first tattoo when I was 23. I purposely waited because I wanted to make a good decision about how to permanently damage my body. My grandmom used to wear anklets all the time. And I thought that they were so sexy. She would wear her heels, and she would always have an anklet on one of her ankles. And I wanted to be like my grandma, but I wanted a permanent anklet. And I hadn't seen a lot of people at that time with tattoos around their ankle. I had no idea that the bonier the area, the worse it hurts. I did not know that. But I thought about what to get. And I honestly went with something that I felt represented growth. And I felt like a vine represented growth, because the only time it stopped growing is if someone cut it down. And I was determined I was not going to ever be cut down. So I created a vine around my ankle that had no beginning and it had no ending. And that's where my tattoo came from.
I love that. Oh, I can't wait to see it and look at it again. Well, and you know what that also reminds me of is that that scripture that says, I'm the vine and you're the branches, and whoever remains in me oh gosh, now I can't remember the rest of it, but just basically talking about how, the growth comes from staying connected to Christ and having that, just having that connection and the growth through him. So I love that. Thank you
You're
for that.
welcome.
Okay. So tell everybody where they can reach you. And we didn't even get a chance to talk about, you alluded to this earlier a little bit about how we have different relationships with our
Yeah.
dads. And we talked about how we're both
Yes.
writers and we both been working on some
Yeah.
books. So tell everybody a little bit about your book and then how they can touch base with you, because I also have to promote your Instagram feed. You've got some really great stuff on there, and I love seeing your face and hearing your words that you put on there. So
Thank you. Well, Daddy Issues, a memoir. I started with an essay that was meant to be a healing process as my father, right after my father passed away. That essay turned into a 254-page book that just reflects on our relationship. It doesn't necessarily give answers, but what it seeks to do is it takes the finger pointing away. And it looks at my dad as a man as opposed to him only being my father. And I reconcile a lot of things about myself, the anger, the frustration, the bitterness, the meanness that I experienced growing up, and going back to kind of what you just said about the vine. You stay connected. And when you lose that connection, we don't know what's going to happen. I lost that connection to my father, but I also lost that connection to my heavenly father, which resulted in complete chaos. So Daddy Issues, a memoir, it'll be released on February the 3rd of 2022. I'm so excited. And of course, it'll be on Amazon, but I'm really trying to get it into a lot of the independent bookstores and create a relationship with them, because I really want to have these talks about what we don't talk about. And we don't talk about how the absence of a parent, specifically in my case, a father, we don't talk about what that creates in us. And I want to start having those conversations with people and helping people understand that regardless to what father we had, we can find a place of peace and love regardless, because we're here and we wouldn't be here without them. Yeah. So I'm everything is easy for me. I love to cook. So finding me is the same on Instagram as it is on Twitter, as it is on Facebook, as it is on my website. And that's just Misha's Time. And time is spelled like the seasoning. So it's just mishastime.com. And at Instagram, it's just Misha's Time. That's how they can find me. I would love for people to find me. Start having these conversations.
Yes. And I cannot let you go without publicly thanking you and thanking you for your friendship and your patience with questions that I have had as I've been, just trying to learn from the Black community, and your openness and your honesty and encouragement. I'm with you. I think that God put us together. Our friendship is sacred to me, and I'm really, really grateful that you're in my life. So thank you.
Oh, I feel the same way. I feel the exact same way. I said, God, your plans always work out well. So thank you for Amy. Thank you very much. When there are things between us that aren't said, but you teach me so much just in who you are. And you create this space of safety and warmth and education and knowing that is a combination that is rare to find in a friend. So thank you. Thank you for opening your home to me. And thank you for opening your ideas to me. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for getting me out of that heat last week, the week before last, when I was about to die because I had coffee and no water, and it's 150 degrees in Texas and I'm out walking. Thank you for being a wonderful friend.
Oh,
you are
thank
a
you.
wonderful friend.
Words simply cannot express how grateful I am for Camisha, our friendship, and her willingness to come on today. These can be uncomfortable conversations, and so I'm appreciative of Camisha's grace and candor and really giving me a safe space to ask them. Make sure you follow Camisha on the socials. Remember, everything is in the show notes. And that way you can also be notified when her issue or her book, Daddy Issues, comes out on February 3rd. I know I'm really looking forward to it. And I know she's put a lot of work into it as well. So I am super excited for her. We have been walking through this process together for sure, for sure. Hey, if you've been listening a while, would you do me a favor and leave an honest review? That's super helpful, particularly on Apple Podcasts. Ratings and stars are they mean a lot to a show. I mean, have you ever pulled something up on Amazon and saw that it really didn't have very many reviews and didn't have very many stars, and you thought, I don't trust this. I'm going to find something else. They matter as much as we don't want them to. They matter. So I know I'm trying to make this simple for you. You know, I'm all about simplicity. It can be confusing and it can be hard to figure out how to leave a rating and review. So if you're not sure, and if you have not yet left one for the Graced Health podcast, I would really appreciate it if you would. There's a link in the show notes that says click here to leave a review. It will take you to a website where you can just fill all of that information in. Super simple, super simple. You know, I love that. And speaking of simple, in each episode, I try to leave you with one simple thing to remember, because sometimes it's just really hard to pull one thing out after a long conversation. And by the way, this was a long one. It was so rich. I just couldn't cut any of it out. So thank you for sticking with us this long. But today's is something that wasn't explicitly said, but Camisha has taught me this throughout our friendship, and it's kind of woven in throughout our conversation. That simple thing is Black women's body image does not begin and end with the body. It is a multi-layered, multifaceted combination of family dynamics, skin tone, hair, even more than that. And then, of course, yes, curves and bumps. I love her word for that. Camisha, thank you again. I'm deeply, deeply grateful for you, this conversation, and our friendship. Okay. That is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.